Good afternoon. This is Steve Sampson and Deborah Vick. Deborah the banker Vick.
That's right. Hello.
With Veterans in Politics. Apparently, Jim Jonas took the day off. You believe that, folks? Jim Jonas took the day off. I believe he's traveling abroad. So,
Good for him.
Deborah the banker Vick, is stepping in for him. Deborah.
Yes, sir.
We haven't hosted together in a while.
It's been a while.
How is All Talk Radio?
You know, they're doing their thing. We're having fun with our show over there. We're building up a clientele and helping people out in the community, so it's all good.
You have a radio program over there. How's that working?
It's great. It's called Moving Forward. It's for business owners, be it startup, existing, basically business owners who want to get their business to the next level.
To the next level?
To the whatever level they're at, we'll get them to the next one.
In this economy?
Absolutely in this economy. You think the government's going to be here to bail us out?
You know, I had a garage sale today. I made over $200.
You did it yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, everybody was so into this garage thing. I don't know why.
Hey, go to the dollar store. It's really packed lately.
Really?
Yes.
Everybody's trying to save a buck, huh?
Well, they're paying attention to where their dollar's going, which isn't a bad thing. But just we got to keep spending. So we got to show up at the yard sales. We got to show up at the stores. You got to keep that money flowing.
You know, maybe our legislators could help us out of this bind we're in. What do you think?
I hope so.
You know, before I even go on to our guests, I have an announcement.
Okay.
And the Veterans in Politics is doing this election pool. There are 46 seats, all the constitutional seats, all the federal seats, all the assembly seats, and all the district court seats. And what this is that they put $10 in, okay, and they get a raffle ticket, and they have to pick 46 seats of who they believe is going to win the election. Not who they hope to win the election, who they believe is going to win the election. Like, say, some people might be working on the Heck campaign, and we'd love to see Joe Heck win, but they probably say, I think Titus might pull it off. And then
Is this kind of like football, fantasy football?
Yeah, kind of like that. Kind of like that. Well, they put $10 in. They get a raffle ticket. They put the raffle ticket on the election pool form. They don't put their names on there, and they mail it back in. And first place is $200. Second place is $50, and third place is $25.
Nice. That sounds like fun.
It's a way for people to get involved and know who these candidates are, and actually,
Pay
be
attention.
real to themselves and
Right.
know exactly who's going to win what race.
Right.
So that's why I want to say, if anybody wants to do something like that, give me a call at 702-283-8088. And I'll get one of these election pools off to you and raffle tickets off to you, and you drop it back in the mail to me. And it has to be received before October 22nd.
Steve, can classrooms participate in that?
Anybody could participate.
You know, what a
in it.
great way for people to educate our future voters into paying attention. My daughter just turned 18, enough to vote for the first time. And from your show and from the people, because she would come into the show and meet the guests that would come in, she literally is going to the polls, understanding who's who, and literally have met them. So what a great experience that is.
Yeah, so, it's pretty good. I think so. Myself and Laura Davison came up with this idea. Plus,
Nice.
it generates money for Veterans in Politics. And, we need the funds.
That's right.
We can't rob anybody like we used to do in the old days. See
You
the
know.
candidates walking out of that town hall meeting and just rob them in the parking lot. We can't do that anymore.
Because you get busted.
I know it's against the law, they told us. But we have. Do you have any rants, by the way?
Know what? Lately, it's been nice. I've been more in the business world. The show that I've been hosting with Adam Hodson, he's a CPA. Actually, just being a host on the show, Steve, has actually built up my own business that I'm in. So I'm literally busy working. Can you believe that?
Really? You work?
I do. I work a lot. Not gonna.
How's the job market going, by the way?
Job markets go up, they go down. I think the question should ask, how's your perspective? What are you doing about the job market versus what's the job market going to do for me? So it's really shifting our attitude. And again, with the people that come on board and the information that I'm learning, I'm applying it to my business, and go figure, business starts growing.
Wow. Well, we're supposed to have 3 guests today. I don't know where Joe Pitts is, but I put a call out to him.
You did. I heard you do that.
And but
he may show up.
We have in the building
All right.
Dan Hill, who's the Republican candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 29. And then we have Susan Scann, who's the candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 29. Look, 2929. How about that?
I'm not 29.
No. Not you being 29. I mean, you got Dan Hill running for District 29,
right?
And you got Susan Scann running for Department 29.
No, this is a numbers town.
I'm telling you, I think I'm gonna play that number in my next keynote and see what happens. But without further ado, let's go to Mr. Dan Hill, the Republican candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 29. Dan, how are you?
Doing all right, Steve.
So, could you give us a bio about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in District 29, and I went to Green Valley High School in the heart of the district. I went to college back east and had a good time out there and had lots of opportunities in the East Coast, but I missed Southern Nevada, and I wanted to come back. And I taught at my parish school for a while and also moonlit at Catholic Charities of Southern Nevada, and that's where I kind of started to see how bad things were starting to be. You had people coming into Catholic Charities who had never had to appeal to charitable efforts, just to get the basic groceries and things like that. And as demand exceeded supply at Catholic Charities, we knew that this was before the collapse happened. We could tell something bad was going to happen, and sure enough, it's only gotten worse. And that's what really got me interested in making sure that the next assembly things are handled responsibly and reasonably.
So, Dan, what are you going to do for the state as a whole and in the constituency in District 29?
Well, the most important thing that we're going to have to do is make sure that the state spending stays under control and the taxes stay reasonable.
And how do you plan to do that?
Well, NPRI recently blew the lid off of the $3 billion deficit myth. Our general budget for this biennium was $6.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
We're projected to have $5 billion of revenue coming in for the next session. Well, now, by my math, that adds up to a $1.5 billion deficit, which even State Senate Majority Leader Stephen Horsford said we'll be able to find $1.5 billion in cuts. What the $3 billion number is assuming is that we're going to increase state spending by 23% for the next budget. And only in government is a decrease in an increase considered a cut. When the government looks at budget cuts, they start with the number they hope that they have. If we just keep state spending at the same level that it was for this budget, the deficit will only be $1.5 billion. Only $1.5 billion. Of course, that's still a significant number, but State Senate Majority Leader Horsford said himself that we would be able to find $1.5 billion in cuts.
So, Dan, we talk about all these cuts. I'm making a whole lot of racket here because I'm having a problem. This is the second week in a row I'm having a problem with the internet here. I'm going to talk to management. This is ridiculous.
Here, let's stick to the point.
It just throws me off my game plan,
Yes, but we're talking about some good numbers here. Question to you, Dan. What I hear people broadcast is, okay, there's no room for cuts. They cut, they lay people off, but then all of a sudden they find this pile of money that comes out of nowhere, and it seems like it always saves the day. So is there a pile mysteriously laying around somewhere that you know about, or?
I wish.
Okay.
Well, we know in the last budget session that money came from borrowing it from the federal government.
Right.
Which they didn't have it either. They
Right.
have their mysterious sources, the printing presses mostly.
Or robbing Peter to pay Paul, something
Sure.
like that.
And they raided all of the local government funds, the capital improvement funds, the water district
Right.
capital improvement funds. So that's where they got it last time. We're obviously not going to be able to do that this time. So we're going to have to find it in trimming, trimming state spending. And they say it can't be done, but there are still significant areas that can be trimmed back.
Well, you're talking to a numbers gal, so give me some examples of, say, a plan of where one can trim.
Okay. A couple of examples would be some state employees, mostly in higher education, receive a 10.5% contribution, 10.5% matching to their 401k contributions.
10.5.
That's not something you'll find in any private sector job anywhere in the country right now.
I worked for the big boys. They never gave us that much.
And we're looking at tens of millions of dollars just right there. We still have some state government employees who make 12% more than the national average and 28% more than comparable private sector jobs, who, and much like, and it's mostly the union bosses that kind of tweak the language. They talk about having taken cuts. Mm-hmm. Well, the cuts that some of these government workers took, or their union bosses took, were cuts to their raises. So instead of getting a 4% raise, they get a 2% raise, and they call that taking a 2% cut.
So, Dan, what are you going to do about the unemployment that's really running rapid here in Nevada? I mean, everybody I know. Well, I'm not going to say everybody. A lot of people I know either having problems with job opportunities, or the foreclosure market is really killing them, or they just want to move out of the state. I mean, what are you going to do to keep people here?
Well, since 1985, all net job growth, every single net job, has come from a company, firm, outfit 5 years old or younger. So the most important thing we can do is keep Nevada as outrageously business-friendly as we possibly can, because we were third most business-friendly. We dropped a rank after the last session to fourth most business-friendly. So then, we just have to make sure that everybody knows and continues to know that Nevada has one of the most friendly business atmospheres in the country. And what would really kill that is a services tax or a corporate income tax. Some of the things that some of the Democrats in the legislature have come out and preemptively supported.
So do you believe in a new revenue source than taxing?
We may have to look at some, but like I said, now that the lid is blown off on this $3 billion deficit, and our state Senate Majority Leader has even said that we can find $1.5 billion in cuts, I think that the most reasonable thing we could look at would be, for example, in the sales tax, to lower the percentage but widen its base. I think that has shown in other states to actually increase the amount of revenue that's coming in without creating new taxes, but just by eliminating some of the exemptions currently for the sales tax, but lowering the overall rate.
Have you signed the tax pledge?
I have not.
You have, why is that?
I'm a reasonable guy, and while I am strongly, intuitively against creating new taxes, I got through my primary as a pragmatic candidate, and I just didn't want to eliminate anything from the table. But we'd have to see some radical reforms of the way Nevada does business and some radical cuts before I would even be willing to consider creating any new revenue streams, as they call it, which is new taxes.
What do you mean the way Nevada does business?
I think the way that government contracts are drawn needs to be looked at. NRS 288, which is the process through which these government contracts are made. Of course, all of the collective bargaining meetings between the union bosses and the government are exempt from Nevada's open meeting laws. You look at 80 to 90% of the state budget is compensating state government employees. That process has to be open and public, and until we really look at how that's done and where inefficiencies are, I won't be willing to consider any new taxes.
Has that caused any problems for you with the conservative base? Not signing the tax pledge?
There are a few contingencies in the party that would have liked to have seen it, but I've knocked on about 8,000 doors in my district. I've talked to every likely swing voter a couple of times, or knocked on their door, left them a note. So the part of the Republican base, and that really matters, my voters, they've all talked to me, and I think that they're comfortable knowing that I'll I'll be a fiscal conservative up there.
Well, let's talk about your district. First of all, what are the boundaries?
It goes from Stephanie to Green Valley Parkway and Horizon Ridge to the 95, roughly. It more or less overlaps the Green Valley High School district.
What are the demographics over there?
In terms of voter registration?
Right.
We have, the Democrats have a 4% registration advantage. It is 22% other and 16% independent.
So what are the issues that faces your district?
We have a lot of foreclosures. It's the same. My district is a more or less a microcosm of Southern Nevada in terms of percentage of demographics and unemployment rate and foreclosure rate. I have a pretty well-balanced district. So they have the same concerns that everyone in the state has. They're concerned about being able to keep their jobs, keep their homes, and keep their taxes low and state spending under control.
I talked to you about a new revenue source. You didn't seem like you were keen on the idea of a new revenue source or new revenue stream, are you?
I think there's ways to increase revenue without creating new taxes, bringing new businesses here.
Well, I'm not talking about new taxes. I'm just talking about a new revenue source. Like for example, I give you one, like the state lottery. Or are you inclined to put a bill forward to create a state lottery, a state lottery in Nevada?
I'd be willing to consider it. I haven't come down in black and white one or the other, but certainly some of the more innovative ways like that, I'd be willing to consider.
What have you considered?
In terms of new revenue sources?
Correct.
Well, I think Assemblyman Settlemyer recently proposed a bill that would make it easier to tax to have the sales tax apply to internet sales, which would not only kind of beef up state revenue. Of course, Congress has to act first. There's a bill before Congress, it being an interstate commerce issue. There's a bill before Congress for them to allow sales on the internet to be taxed. This isn't a new tax. It's simply there are sales going on the internet that aren't taxed that tend to hurt our local businesses, the mom and pop type places, because you can get it cheaper online because you don't have to pay the sales tax. Mm-hmm. So that's an example of something that might beef up the state revenue without creating a new tax.
What about marijuana? Would you like to see something like that? I know I'm not talking to a Democrat here, but I am trying to look for another revenue source. And I watched The Untouchables. And I remember how Prohibition. Well, I don't remember how Prohibition was.
Sure,
I didn't
Steve.
live that long, but alcohol used to be illegal, and I'm for legalizing marijuana with restrictions, just like they have it with alcohol. They have restrictions on alcohol that 0.08 or higher is a DUI. Blah 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 blah, and I haven't heard anybody getting into a brawl fight smoking marijuana. I haven't heard anybody have domestic violence smoking marijuana. But I've heard a lot of people getting in brawl fights drinking alcohol. I've heard a lot of people getting into domestic violence after they had a couple scotch or whiskey or gin. So tell me about your feelings on marijuana and why you would support taxing and legalizing, or why you wouldn't. Because it's just a drug, or so is alcohol. Alcohol has a whole bunch of drugs in it, if you want to break it down. In fact, there are all kinds of chemicals in alcohol if you look at it. But tell me your reason why or why not.
Well, I'll tell you, because the Democrats have the propensity in the most recent mail attack pieces they've sent out at me to take my words out of context and kind of twist. I'm afraid I'm going to have to take a cautious political answer to this one and say I would be willing to look at any studies or proposals, but I would also have to consult the voters in my district and see where they stand on it. I was talking to somebody a couple of months ago, and he was talking about how politicians they always just do what their people want. Well, I thought that was an odd thing to attack a politician for, because that's kind of what we go up there for, is to do what the voters in our districts want. So I'd have to talk to my voters about that one.
You ever heard of the terminology? It goes something like this: a mind of a Republican, a heart of a Democrat, and the courage of an independent. That means that this person is willing to listen to all people, whether no matter what party they belong to or what their beliefs are. They're willing to sit down at the table, listen to them, and come up with some kind of compromise. Are you going to be that type of legislator?
No, I've always held myself up as the practical candidate, and I was always raised on the idea that a conservative is supposed to be the one who comes to the table with no ideology. Conservatism is an absence of an ideology. It's someone who comes to the table and is just looking for the most practical, sensible, and reasonable outcome, and that's always what I've held myself up to want to do up there in Carson City.
And what moved you? What prompted you to get into this race? Did somebody pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Dan, we need a Republican to run in 29," or did you say, "You know what? I looked at it and I see what's going on with my state, and I feel that I need to do something about it"? Which one of those two happened?
Oh, it was the second. I initially was on the recruiting side. I have a friend on the Chamber of Commerce, and I got together with him, and we had a PAC, the Battleborn Initiatives PAC, and we wanted to go out there and find, younger, practical, reasonable, sane candidates who had the future of Nevada near and dear to their hearts. And through that process, I looked at the numbers in 29. I was hoping they would be able to find somebody else.
Of course.
But then, it's one of only 3 swing districts in the entire state, or districts where the incumbent is vulnerable. There really are only 3 of those or so in the state. So I knew it was an important one. I knew I was willing to work hard for it and go and meet all of the residents and see what they had to say. So that's how it came to happen.
Have you been to Carson City?
I have not.
Uh-oh.
I hear it's an exciting place, though.
You can say yet. I
have not yet. Okay. Well, I'm a cautious individual.
Well, I've had the pleasure to go to Carson several times and sit on the state Senate floor and sit on the Assembly floor and sit in a few hearings. Ways and Means is one of them. In fact, I think that's one of my favorites. Do you have any idea as to what committee you'd like to sit on?
I would like to work with education. I've seen, just as an example, our
you just opened up the door, right?
Oh,
door's wide open.
And that's what I've been getting attacked on. Ironically enough, is my supposed plan to ruin education. But I see, just as an example, our local law school, by sheer force of will and private investment, has become almost a top-tier law school in only
phenomenal.
10 years. And they do a great job. And most of the local big law firms hire only William S. Boyd School of Law graduates.
Right.
So I see what sheer force of will can do for education. And that's just one example, and there's no reason that it can't be done on a much grander scale.
Well, I'm starting to see more education for the medical community. I think you have Toro University in your district.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We have outsiders coming in. We're in a lot of power struggle. And I have to say this, you left our state to continue your education. Can you answer why you did that?
Uh-oh. Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. It was. I wasn't a hyper political person back then. I will say, I decided I had a choice between. I'm currently a law student here in town, and I had a choice between Notre Dame and UNLV law, and I did decide to stay and engage in that law community.
Good answer. Good.
How about that?
That's a good answer.
So Dan, you keeping abreast on the superintendent search of Clark County?
I am.
How do you feel about the choices of the school trustee?
Well, I can say about Jones that Colorado is they've been passing some, or just recently it passed a fairly common sense reform that takes a closer look at teacher tenure and making sure that they're producing good work in the classroom. So I can say that his former state has been doing some common sense things.
What endorsement have you received?
Most recently, I was the only Republican challenging an incumbent to be endorsed by the Henderson Chamber of Commerce, which was I was very proud to receive that endorsement and the confidence of the small business folk down there in Henderson. Veterans in Politics, of course. Citizens for Responsible Government are a few.
No NRA?
I am endorsed by the NRA.
No AFL-CIO? Why you laugh, Dan?
Well, I know they're bipartisan, but I wasn't contacted.
Are they
them.
really? Well, Dan, I like to say it's a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you.
And Deborah, you have anything for Dan?
Just real quick, we were talking about education. What are your thoughts on how PE and after-school activities are being taken out of the education system?
Well, I think it's unfortunate, and it should be unnecessary. If we got an honest and common sense restructuring of the way we spent the money in the school district, we shouldn't have to get rid of those programs.
Okay. Well, Dan, thank you for coming on. Could you give us your point of contact?
Sure. The email is dan4assembly, all spelt out, @gmail.com. And the website is www.danhill4assembly.com.
Well, that's Dan Hill. He's the Republican candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 29, and he has been endorsed by Veterans in Politics, and we encourage all the Veterans in Politics listeners, friends of veterans, veterans themselves, to go down to the polls between October 16th to the 29th. Cast your vote early for Mr. Dan Hill if you live in his district. If you don't live in his district, call a friend that does and tell them to cast their vote for Dan Hill. And November 2nd, which is a general election. So, Dan, good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
This is Steve Sanson, Deborah Vick with Veterans in Politics, and we'll be back momentarily with Susan Scann, candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 29.
Hi, my name is Ken Walther, and I'm the conservative veteran small business owner, candidate for Assembly District 18. I ask you to visit my web, ken4nevada.com. That's Ken, number 4, Nevada.com, to see what my issues and plans are. We need smaller government, not bigger, and we all need to pull together. This is Ken Walther, ken4nevada.com. Join me in taking Assembly District 18 back for the people. I approve this message. Thank you.
Paid for by the Friends of Ken Walther.
Hello, my name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
Hi, this is Chuck Ann Baker, the editor of the Veterans Reporter newspaper, the only newspaper in Nevada for veterans and their families. Pick up your free copies at most VA offices, most libraries, at the American Legion, the VFW, the DAV, and hundreds of other locations. We also produce the Veterans Reporter radio show every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m., KLAV Radio, AM 1230, and we stream it live, www.klav1230am.com. This is Chuck Ann Baker for the Veterans Reporter newspaper.
Hi, I'm Travis Barrick, the Republican nominee for Attorney General, and I approve this message. Brian Krolicki received over 122,000 votes in the June primary, more than anybody else on the ballot. The lawsuit against him by Ms. Masto was a political witch hunt where she wasted thousands of your dollars. She has disgraced the office of Attorney General by being a partisan hack of Harry Reid, and their socialist agenda is too radical for Nevada. You have the right to expect better of your Attorney General, and I have the integrity to deliver on that expectation. Go to travisberrick.com to learn more about me and my campaign.
Hello, my name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
Well, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Deborah Vick with Veterans in Politics. And before we go to our guests, I just want to say Joe Pitts, candidate for University Board of Regents District 13, was scheduled to be on the show, received emails and voice communication, and never had any word back saying that he wasn't going to be on the show. So I'm very disappointed in Mr. Pitts. No call, no show. And if somebody's like that as a candidate, I sure as heck would not want them to be my elected official. Just putting that out there for you folks.
So on that note,
Susan,
we do have some people in the studio today.
Susan Scann, candidate for Clark County District Court, Judge Apartment 29. Susan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing real good. Susan, could you give us a bio about yourself?
I'd be happy to. I've been living here in Las Vegas for 34 years now. I moved here in 1976. I originally grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. Lived in the West in Seattle. I worked for the Boeing Company for a while after college, graduated from UW. Lived in Hawaii for a while because I got rained out in Seattle. And then I went to San Diego for law school, the Cal Western School of Law. And I came to Las Vegas while I was interviewing, and this was such a friendly community. There are a number of grads here from Cal Western.
They're friendly out here?
I thought
was
this
34 years ago.
Oh,
That's
okay.
right.
They got on friendly.
I still think of it as a small town, maybe because I've been here for so long, but it's certainly much, much bigger.
Yes.
But it's just been a great place to practice law, and I feel really, really privileged that I've been able to live here and work here for as long as I have.
You want to introduce your biggest fan to your left?
Absolutely. This is my husband, Bob Scann. And he came here the same year that I did, but we didn't meet each other until 2 years later.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, folks, Bob is a little upset with me because Susan Scann introduced him as a veteran, 4 years in the Army band, and I said that, well, you don't say that to a combat Marine, and Bob got all mad. But go ahead, Bob. Tell us about your life in the Army.
I was what you call a support personnel in the military district of Washington. My job, my function was the uplifting spirits of the GIs in the D.C. area and all the people that came back from the war.
Well, Bob, I have a lot of respect for you, so don't take my funny too seriously, okay? Susan, let's go back to you.
Okay. Well, let me tell you how I met Bobby.
Okay.
I was, when I had to turn in my plates here, I sat in the line at the DMV for what seemed like forever and became acquainted with the person standing next to me because we were there forever. And he and his wife eventually lined me up with Bobby. It was a blind date.
Wow.
And our 30th anniversary is coming up and next week.
Congratulations. Am I invited for the anniversary dinner?
Well, because of the campaign, we are not having an anniversary dinner per se.
Okay. Susan, you were running for a judicial race a few years ago.
That's right.
2 years ago, right?
2 years ago, 2008.
And you were, at that time, endorsed by the Veterans in Politics.
That's correct.
And this time around, they went with your opponent.
That's correct.
And you are a little upset, which I don't blame you. I would be upset, too. Tell us why. Why should the voters go to the poll and vote for you?
The reason the voters should go to the poll and vote for me is because I am by far the most experienced candidate. I've been practicing here for 34 years as a civil lawyer. That's the kind of seat this is. I also have had 30 years of experience as an alternate municipal court judge for the city of Las Vegas, which means that I sit when people are on vacation or sick. I have 3 years approximately of experience as a court-annexed arbitrator, which means that I hear and decide cases, the same kind of cases as are filed in the 8th Judicial District Court civil side, but they're under $50,000, between 10 and 50. So I have a wealth of experience, and I think that breadth of experience would benefit the court the most. And my opponent has been a family court judge for a year and a half. He was just elected in 2008. I recommend people take a look at the Judging the Judges poll because his ratings were not good in that particular poll. So from what I understand, his platform is because of a Supreme Court decision, some of the jurisdiction that family courts had are now going to be in district court. And I can use my experience to help out. And I would suggest that that's simply not the case. And also because I've practiced since when district court did everything. I did family law for 10 years. I've done probate. Those are some of the functions, the non-family but still kind of domestic, partition
Connected.
Actions, right, are going to be in district court. I've handled partition actions. I've done some probate. So none of these things are unfamiliar with me. I have the requisite experience and background. Plus, I think I have the ability to be fair and impartial and do my own research and writing still. I love doing that. The law is something that has kept me engaged and enjoyed for 34 years, and I look forward to doing it for many more.
If my memory serves me correctly, I believe David Wall is resigning. Is that correct? He's going to open up a district seat?
That's right.
For the new governor to pick?
That's right.
Okay. Do candidates that are running for office, I don't know if this is legal or not, or if they can't do it. If they're running for office, could they also apply for an appointment at the same time?
I don't know that there's any prohibition on it. The deadline for that appointment is November 5th. Oh, okay. So people who are running are going to know, whether
they'll be like, oh my God,
right.
I lost, and I'm going to jump into this appointment stuff. Okay, Susan, what do you think about specialized courts? How do you feel about that? I know they have drug court. They have I know Judge Voy has the teenage prostitution that he deals with, the specialized courts for them over there on the family side, and I know the Veterans Court was passed in the last legislature. How do you feel about these specialized courts?
I think those are a great idea because you have a judge then who is able to spend the extra time to develop that program, to find resources in the community to help people. And I don't think that everybody, when you sentence a person after a criminal conviction, you look at the whole person. I don't think that it serves society well to just throw everybody in jail and throw away the key. I mean, there are a lot of people who can be benefited. I would be happy to serve in drug court or mental health court if I am elected to the 8th District Court, because I think it's important to try to make people productive members of society, not just throw them away.
What kind of unique ability do you bring to the bench, and what would you be specialized in? Would it be more of a civil or would it be more of a criminal? Because I know there is a judicial race out there, and you have one of the candidates that are running who's more criminal experience, and you got another one who's more civil experience, and then the civil one is saying, well, the district court judge that I'm going to go to is going to be more civil, and the criminal one is saying the total opposite. Do you bring both of those perspectives to the bench, or you just favor one over another?
My career has been very heavily civil. My criminal experience is the experience I've had on municipal court, which is misdemeanors and traffic. I haven't dealt with a felony. I haven't had a criminal practice. But having been in muni court, I have some feel for how that works. But civil court is what these new seats are going to be, at least for the 2 years. And the kinds of cases you get are much broader, and there's a lot more reading, a lot more paperwork, and I'm a reader. That's my hobby. I love to read. Research. That's something that I'm really interested in doing, and the volume of paperwork in the civil side is much heavier. So I think that's something that I'm good at, and that I could bring to the courts.
Since this Veterans Court has passed the legislature, my feedback is that Northern Nevada is more actively involved in the Veterans Court. They're asking defendants if they are veterans. But they're not doing it so much down here in Clark County. How are you going to be to make sure that to ask veterans, or to ask defendants rather, if they are veterans?
Well, if I find myself in a civil or a criminal capacity, that's one of the things you need to know. You need to know who that person is if you're going to be sentencing them. So that's a piece of information that I would want to have and can ask for.
Do you feel that if somebody is a veteran and he did something, let's go with something not so hard but bad. Let's go with domestic violence. He came back from the combat theater and he beat up his wife. And I know it's hard for a lot of people to hear that. And how would you treat somebody like that?
Would you, Steve, bad is bad.
Would you my co-host is like coming at me now. Would you try to get treatment for this person instead of
well, the
incarceration?
person has to accept the crime and has to be punished for the crime. But I think treatment is something that also should be part of the package. Because again, you've got an individual who is unable to function in society, and perhaps that's a result of a service that person did to society. But you still can't, they say the right to throw your fist ends where the other person's nose begins. That's something that we really can't forget.
Right. I understand that, and I guess I'm a little bit more partial to the vet because I understand the nature of being in the combat and seeing the horrors that combat has to offer, and coming back to civilian society, you just don't really turn it off. I mean, it just replays in your head all the time. And there's a lot of time, and I'm sure your husband could agree with me. And there's sometimes you just snap, because of the horror that you had back. I'm not saying it's right, Susan. I'm just saying that there has to be a way that we could deal with our veterans that are serving our country, that are put their lives in harm's way for our freedom, and try to rehabilitate them back into civilian society once something like this occurs.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that there's a recognition of it, because if you go back to our earlier wars, like World War II, everybody just came home. And I had one of my uncles was a very bubbly 18-year-old when he went off to World War II, and when he came back,
wasn't so bubbly.
He was a complete recluse. He spent the rest of his life as an elevator operator in a building.
He just wants to cut himself off from human nature.
And that was it. And he never functioned. He supported himself. He lived with Grandpa. And that was it. His life was pretty much over. And then we had the people who came back from Vietnam who were not only not helped, but were reviled because they had gone to war.
And they came back and get criticized by their own country.
And now we recognize how wrong that is. And there's
like John Kerry, but who I shouldn't say that, right?
Now.
But
so now we recognize that the problem exists. And I think from what I read, and I don't have the personal experience, but from what I read, at least the Veterans Administration and the public in general is recognizing and trying to give help for people with post-traumatic stress disorder. They used to call it battle fatigue or shell shock back in World War I.
Or soldier's hawk is one of the names they call it. Yeah.
Okay.
Vietnam syndrome, whatever that means. Let's shift gears a little bit, Susan. I don't know if Deborah, you could jump in any time, but let's switch gears a little bit, Susan. The coroner's inquest. Now, the coroner's inquest, I don't know what to say about it. And, I've never, since I've been here for 15 years, I've never heard of any officer got excusable or criminal. They're always justified in their actions. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I wasn't there. I don't know what's going on. But what I read, you got one 19-year-old who was in the back of a squad car, hands cuffed behind his back, fled the squad car, and the officer shot him in the back. And it was justifiable. And then you got another one. It was a drug bust. Apparently the guy made a sudden movement. He wasn't armed, and they were doing a drug search, and he got shot in the face, unarmed. And then you have the Costco one, veteran, and that really hurts, the veteran part. 7 shots, 5 in the back, weapon in the holster on the ground. So I don't know. I could probably see the first shot being justified, but I can't see the others being justified as well. How do you feel about the coroner's inquest? Do you feel, as far as what you've read and what you've heard, do you feel it more favors the police officer, or or because it doesn't seem like it's favored all the people.
My question is, where's the accountability?
Well,
Where's the checks and balance? If they're, viewing what happened with their own, people, it seems like. I mean, I'm just a banker here going, I'm used to guidelines and things should pan out. But we see a pattern. I mean, we're hearing these things over and over again.
Sometimes I wonder, there's some speculation about people putting themselves in those positions because they're just in bad shape. But it seems to me, as a matter of common sense, that if you're dealing with a policeman and you've got a gun, you just lay down on the ground or you do what you're supposed to do. I did a ride along with a policeman once, and I had stopped to talk to a tourist, and I turned around, and the policeman had his gun drawn on somebody who had a plastic pistol in his glove box, refused to open the glove box, didn't tell the policeman what was in there, and so when he finally did open it, the cop reacted and pulled the gun.
Right.
And the whole thing was diffused, and fortunately, there was no problem. The fellow was sorry, and cooperated. But as far as the inquest itself, I think at least, it was public. We had an awful lot of testimony. I didn't follow it or listen to it every day, but it seemed like there were an awful lot of witnesses that said that it looked like he was going for his gun. That seems like a dangerous thing to do if you're
But like I said, Susan, the first shot, maybe even the second shot, but 5 shots in the back.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That seems odd.
Help me with that. I'm a Marine. 1 shot, 1 kill.
Well,
if my buddies are shooting, that does not give me
there were 3 of them.
Yeah, if my buddies are shooting, that does not give me the green flag to also press the trigger as well.
Steve, I'm not a Marine, and something's not right. So.
Yeah, in the back, how did that happen? I don't know.
Right.
I didn't listen to the testimony. The one thing about an inquest is that it is one-sided. There's no cross-examination.
Right.
Of course, there'll be a civil suit, I'm sure, where all of that will come out. Yeah, but it's I don't know. It seems like it's a difficult line to draw too, because you're getting more and more officer-involved shootings, and why is that happening? Why do we have so many people?
Well, I think that the senior officers are leaving, and there's too many of the youngsters out there, maybe trigger happy, want to make a name for themselves. I don't know, and I think there's too many people giving verbal commands. I think that the first officer on the scene should give all the verbal commands, and everybody else should shut up. Because if you're hearing so many verbal commands, you're going to be all confused and disarrayed, and you already got guns in you, and you're already like, what the heck is going on? And this person is telling me that, put my hands up. This one is telling me go to the ground. This one is telling me put my hands behind my back. What should I do?
Well, if you're a trained military, what would you do?
Me?
Yes.
Well, what I would do is I used to be an MP.
Okay.
What I would do is throw my hands up in the air and turn around, let them know I don't have nothing on me without moving my hands. My hands are staying in the air, and that's what I would do. And I'll just keep my hands up in the air like an arrow, and I wouldn't move it until somebody comes from wearing that uniform, comes and throw me to the ground. Then I'll go to the ground. Other than that, no.
And let them find the weapon, and let the policeman find the weapon. Let them throw me to the ground.
I'm not gonna go to the ground and they say, "Well, you made a sudden movement."
I would have gone to the ground saying, "Please just don't leave me alone."
No,
one or the other.
That ground is hot. That ground is like probably 200 degrees. I'm not dropping to that ground.
I'm just trying to get out of the way.
There's so many times though when police go into situations, I don't think they don't know what kind of a threat they face too. Right. I mean, it's just there are all kinds of things going on out there. So it's important that this inquest be open, and I think they are more open than they used to be, so that the public gets to hear what happened.
Do you believe the right to bear arms for citizens, Susan?
I do.
So you're a CCW owner, permit holder?
No, I don't have a gun. My husband is a musician, and I'm afraid if I had a gun in the house and he came in at 3 a.m, that I might accidentally shoot him. So I don't want to have a weapon.
Once you become a judge, and I know a lot of judges that have CCWs, but it'd probably be a good thing for you to go get one.
That doesn't sound very encouraging.
Well, you never know what you have to deal with, Susan, and you don't know the mentality of these folks that you might be incarcerating, or you might say, okay, you owe $10 million to that firm. Yeah, you don't know how these people are going to act.
Yeah,
it's just protection, right?
Well, you make a point. As far as I'm concerned, training might be a good thing for me to have.
That's the word, training. There you go.
I always look at every elected official, and one of the key things that comes to my mind is approachability. And that's one of the things that I feel elected officials should be approachable. And I know you're very approachable. Do you think that that's something that you should have as far as running for a public office?
I think you have to have it if you're running for a public office. But when
still
you're
mad at me?
No. I don't. That's one of the
Dave
worst
Thomas
things.
told me that you were going to scold me.
And he also told me you didn't vote. So.
No, I don't.
No, I mean on the endorsement, not
No,
not vote. I'm sure
I
you
don't vote. I don't vote.
Yeah,
The chair does not vote.
Okay, so I can't be mad at you.
Okay, good.
I don't believe in holding grudges anyway. I think that's a poor way to conduct yourself.
Well, Susan, I met you for the first time today, and I came in after my class to come down to the station, and you're just so warm and friendly, and that's the kind of people we need in office that are just open, to us.
Thank you.
And you didn't know me from Adam, so I appreciate that.
Well,
And I hate arrogance in an elected official, by the way. I just cannot stand an arrogant elected official. I could understand an arrogant person that's not elected official, but once you raise a hand and take that oath, I think all arrogance should just be beneath you.
You're
Steve,
a public servant.
bad is bad.
Well, let me make one point about judges, though, because, you talk about judges being open and friendly. One thing you can't have is ex parte contact with one side of a case.
Right.
So to that extent, a judge cannot be open. Certainly in terms of meeting the public in general.
Right.
Yes, but not. And you can't, as a judge, say what you would do in some future situation because you don't know what the facts are and you don't know what the law are.
Right.
So those limitations apply.
Well, at least you're not like Michael Villani. When I used to ask, I had him here one time. Well, not here at this studio, but I had him in the studio, and he wouldn't answer any questions. He just wants to talk about his family because he said that he can't talk about this, he can't talk about that. That's before him, or that might be before him. It's hypothetical, and I just, Judge Villani, I'm not going to be bothered to bring him back on. Now, Judge Villani, if you listen to me, you're my buddy. Don't worry about it. But let me ask you something, Susan. That ballot initiative about appointing judges instead of elected, how do you feel about that?
I keep going back and forth on that because there are good things about each side. The thing that I think is the best about the ballot initiative is the screening panel. Right. I don't call it merit selection because it's merit screening because the candidates have to go through a panel and only 3 names go before to the governor. And that means that whoever gets the job should be qualified. But then after that, it's purely political.
You know what? I believe that the people should elect. I like the process the way it is. If a seat becomes vacant during the term before the term is up, the governor, or if it's a justice of the peace, the Clark County Commission fills it. I like that process. I don't think that one person should hold so much power, or a group of folks should harness so much power, because that's also political too. Even any way you want to spin it, it's still political. I think that and everybody said, well, Elizabeth Halverson, that's one incident. I don't think that.
Well, she's not been the only one.
Well, there was Danny Ostrom too, but we don't want to talk about.
That was a different situation, though. I think.
Susan, if people in your district want to find out more information about you, how can they find that out? Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's www.susanscann.com.
Okay, great.
But let me mention one other thing about this, the amendment to appoint. There's a retention election, so there still is that facing the voters. Voters who want to vote for judges, I think that's a great thing. The downside of that is that judges raising money creates an appearance of impropriety. But also, voters need to educate themselves about judges. Right. We're at the bottom of the ballot, and we're also at the bottom of the what do people know about us? So.
Well,
there's responsibilities along with the electoral power.
For the first time, I've seen so many billboards that judges have out, or judicial candidates have out there than I've ever seen in the electoral process. And I think that a lot of people are paying attention to these judicial candidates, and they're really saying, because a lot of people go, well, I don't need to vote for judges. I'll never see them. But, things happen. I mean, divorces, custody, somebody hit you from behind, my incident on New Year's Eve. Things happen. You know what I mean? She's looking at me like, what incident on New Year's Eve?
We're not here to talk about that. But anyway. But that is important. Right. Yeah, you never know.
Susan, well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. Bobby, I want to thank you too.
Thank you.
And how you guys do it in the Army? Oh yeah. I forget. Anyways, this is Steve Sanson. And Deborah Vick with Veterans in Politics. I'd like to thank Susan Scann, who is the judicial candidate running for District Court Judge, Department 29. The best of luck in her campaign and her race. Until next week.
I